9, 8, 7, 6.
Good evening and welcome to this evening's Development Management Committee meeting. I'm Joan Grime, Councillor for Culcheth, Glaisbury and Croft, and I will be chairing the meeting. Due to the current coronavirus pandemic, the Council have taken steps to follow restrictions and health guidance in relation to social distancing, whilst balancing the needs of carrying out our regulatory functions. This is the fourth meeting of this committee that is being held remotely. The agenda for the meeting will run as per the usual format. The meeting is being broadcast live to the public, who have had the opportunity to make written representations which have been distributed to members. However, there will be no input from the public during the meeting. This is in line with the Coronavirus Act of 2020, Section 78. Present at the meeting are 8 elected Borough Councillors plus officers of Warrington Borough Council. I will now ask all those present to introduce themselves. Will councillors also confirm that they have received the agenda and reports on the applications and have a copy in front of them? An update report has also been circulated and available for members to view. So, Councillor Barr.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Barr. I represent Lymm North and Latchford, Lymm North and Thelwall, trying to come across the Ship Canal. And yes, I have got all the documents before me and I've read the documents.
Thank you, Councillor Carey.
Yes, Chair, good evening. I'm Peter Carey, representing Fairfield and Howley Ward, and I confirm that I've received all the relevant documents and have read them all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Friend.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Graham Friend, representing Poulton North. I have read all the documents and I have them loaded up on a separate laptop to my side. Thank you.
Councillor Mundry.
Councillor Karen Mundry, Latchford East. I have all the documents in front of me and I have read most of all of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parish.
Councillor Steve Parish, Chapelford and Old Hall Ward. I've read all the papers and have them to hand.
Councillor Wheeler.
Hello, I'm Councillor Wheeler, representing Appleton, Hatton, Stretton and Higher Walton. I have the papers in front of me and I have read them.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Councillor Steve Wright, representing Busey Whitecross. I have the papers and I have read them.
Thank you. I'll also ask the officers to introduce themselves. We have officers from Democratic Services.
Good evening, it's Jenny Cordwell from Democratic Services.
Thank you. Legal Services.
Yes, Chair, Paul Clisby here as legal advisor to the committee.
We have the Development Manager from Planning, Nikki.
Thank you, Chair. Nikki Gallagher, Development Manager.
Thank you. And also another Planning Officer, Martha.
Martha Hughes, Principal Planning Officer.
Thank you. Officer from Transport, Mike.
Thanks, Chair. Mike Taylor, Highways Development Control.
The Director of Growth.
Good evening, my name's Steve Park. I'm the Director of Growth at the Council and I have responsibility for development management.
Thank you. And we also have 2 officers from Environmental Health. Could I ask you to introduce yourselves?
Certainly. I'm Steve Smith. I'm Principal Environmental Health Officer for the Council, looking primarily at noise matters.
And I'm Richard Moore. I'm the Air Quality Officer for the Council and the Environmental Health team.
Thank you. Right, we go on to agenda item 1, apologies. Have we any apologies, Jenny?
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor McCarthy and Councillor Morgan.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any disclosable pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest which they have in any item of business on the agenda no later than when the item is reached. Can I ask you individually, Councillor Barr?
Absolutely. I know Sorry, no declarable interests.
Right, thank you. Councillor Carey.
Nothing to declare, Chair.
Councillor Friend.
Yes, Chair. Item 1, planning application that came in 2016. I was one of the main speakers against this application when it came before us. But I believe we're just viewing a report tonight, so I presume I can take part in the meeting, as a lot of the councillors on the committee did vote against this application at the time when it came to the committee.
Anything from legal?
Yes, Chair. I mean, clearly, as long as Councillor Friend has not made his mind up about how he's going to vote this evening, and is going to consider all of the information before him and come to a conclusion and vote on that, then the fact that he may have a predisposition is not fatal. You know, as long as he's not made his mind up and he's prepared to listen to the arguments, then that's fine. That's not an interest as such.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm prepared to do that. Item number 2 is being opposed by Poulton with Fernhead Parish Council. I'm a member of that council, but I always leave the room when they discuss planning matters, so I have not had a discussion about that issue. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mundry.
Nothing to declare, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Parish.
No, I have no interest to declare.
Thank you. Councillor Wheeler.
No interest to declare, Chair.
Right, Councillor Wright.
No interest to declare.
Okay, thank you. Item 3 is in my ward, Culcheth, Glacebury and Croft, but I've had no discussion with anyone about it, and I also am on the parish council and have left the meeting when it was discussed. Okay, the minutes of the last meeting. Has any member seen a problem with the minutes of the meeting on the 10th of June, which have been circulated to you? Any problems seen? Right, I confirm that the minutes of the DMC meeting held on the 10th of June 2020 are a correct record. So now we go on to item 4, planning applications. We will first take the applications 2 and 3 and then item 1. So, number 2, item 2, application number 2019 34628. That is land to the rear of numbers 57 to 91 Orford Road, Warrington. The application is full planning the erection of a detached bungalow. Can I invite the development manager to present a report?
Thank you, Chair. The application relates to a narrow piece of land running parallel to the rear gardens of 57 to 91 Orford Road, with the area of open space to the west, as shown on the location plan on page 27 of your report, also within the ownership of the applicant. The site is within the ward of Poulton South rather than Poulton with Fernhead, as stated within your report. The application site is currently occupied by stables, and it is proposed that these would be retained and refurbished, and a new gravel track would provide access. The stables would be for domestic use only, associated with the proposed bungalow. The site is bound to the west by the rear boundaries of the residential properties fronting onto Orford Road, and there is a shallow bund to the east with a height of approximately 1.2 metres. The application has been called before DMC by Councillor Colin Froggatt, who has objected to the proposal due to encroachment on the existing properties, the impact on the flood defences, which is the bunding I've previously referred to, poor access and egress from Orford Road. In addition, 7 letters of objection have been received on the basis of housing need, road safety, residential amenity, character, increased flood risk and ecological matters, as detailed within section 14 of the report. On receipt of amended plans, further consultation took place, generating a further 11 letters of objection for the reasons that have previously been identified. As members are aware, all planning applications should be determined in accordance with local development plan policies unless other material considerations indicate otherwise. The local plan policies against which the application should be assessed are contained within section 17 of your report for information. The primary issues associated with the development are the principal, highway matters, impact on residential amenity, impact on character and appearance, and environmental matters, and I'll take each of these in turn. The application is for residential use within a sustainable area located within walking distance of local amenities. Members will be aware that currently Warrington is unable to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply as required by the National Planning Policy Framework. This is material in considering the proposal and should be attributed weight, particularly given that it is considered that the application site is in a sustainable location. While it is recognised that the site is greenfield, the approval of this would not undermine the Council's wider objectives for the majority of new housing to be built in brownfield sites because it relates to just one property. Given that similar residential uses are established within the vicinity and the application would make a contribution to the Council's 5-year housing land supply, albeit small, it is considered acceptable in principle. The proposal seeks to utilise the existing access to the site off Orford Road, which would have an approved radii. Egress visibility is outside of the applicant's control as it is affected by the neighbouring property's front boundary wall, but notwithstanding this, the applicant has been able to demonstrate to the satisfaction of officers that an adequate visibility display is achieved, taking into account specifics of the site, including average vehicle speeds past the site and the domestic as opposed to commercial nature of the use. On this basis, considered there would be no harmful impact on road or pedestrian safety. During the course of its consideration, the application has been amended from a 2-storey dwelling to form a bungalow with an overall height of 5.4 metres and 2.9 metres to the eaves, including an increase in ground level. The proposed dwelling would not have any windows facing towards the rear of the properties on Orford Road and will be a minimum of 3 metres from the shared boundary and 27 metres to habitable room windows. This is significantly in excess of the 13 metres usually required between gables and windows. Due to the siting scale and orientation of the proposed property, it is considered that there would be no significant adverse impact in the amenity of the neighbouring properties. Consideration has been given to the parking arrangements, which would be located adjacent to the proposed property to the rear of number 57's garden. Given the length of the garden and enclosures between it is considered that would not result in an adverse impact in the amenity of the neighbouring property. Consideration has also been given to the character and appearance of the proposed property. It is the case that it differs significantly from those within the vicinity, but it has been designed specifically in relation to the plot in which it is situated, using existing site entrance and taking into account the relationship to other properties and the stables with which it will be associated with, harmonising with its surroundings through the use of sustainable materials. Consideration has also been given to the position of the proposed property in close proximity to part of Warrington's River Mersey flood defence scheme, which is the bunding that we previously referred to. This is an asset of the Environment Agencies, and as such they were notified of the application, which included a flood risk assessment. This was considered acceptable to both the Environment Agency and United Utilities, and there is confidence that the application would not exacerbate flooding around the site and that the proposed dwelling would not be susceptible to flooding. The site currently has an established lawful use for personal equestrian use, and therefore any assessment should be considered in light of this information. Notwithstanding this, the applicants have submitted a noise management report and have agreed conditions in relation to the cleaning of the stable block so that it is limited to sociable hours. Taking into account all material considerations, including those raised by local residents as detailed within your report, it is considered that the application adheres to policies contained within the local plan and is therefore recommended for approval, subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, Councillor Friend here.
Yes.
Can I just point something out? Nikki mentioned page 27 of the report. That is page 88 of the digital report that the members of the public see.
Thank you for that information. Thank you. That's helpful. I can confirm that we've received a written representation from Mr. Dodd, which is in support of the application. I will now ask members of the committee to confirm that they have read and understood that representation. Councillor Barr?
Yes, I've read and understood the representation.
Right, Councillor Carey?
Yes, Chair, I've received it.
Councillor Friend?
Yes, read and understood, Chair. Thank
Councillor
you.
Mundry?
Read and understood, Chair.
Councillor Parish?
Yes, read and understood.
Councillor Wheeler?
Yes, Chair, read and understood.
Councillor Wright? Councillor Wright?
Yes, Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, can now, thank you.
Yeah, read and
And
understood.
I also have read the representation. I confirm this representation will be included in the minutes of the meeting. So I'll now invite comments and questions from members to the officers in turn. Councillor Barr, have you got any comments or questions?
Not at this stage.
Okay. Councillor Carey.
No, Chair, no comments.
Okay, Councillor Friend.
None at present, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Mundry.
Not at present, Chair.
Councillor Parish.
No questions yet.
Councillor Wheeler.
Are you asking for comments, Chair, or is it questions at this stage?
Either comments or questions.
2 comments, Chair. One is the design of the bungalow. I know it won't be visible for the road, but having complete rear elevations with no windows doesn't particularly make for good design. Certainly won't be overlooking to the properties on Orford Road, but hardly strikes me as being an example of good design. The other point relates to highways access. I did drive up to have a look at this. I know I'm not supposed to, but I did. I drove into the narrow track down the side of the property, then realised I couldn't get out. So I had to reverse onto Orford Road.
Ooh.
It was quiet. It was a Sunday morning, but as I was reversing, a family walked past, which was absolutely fine. I saw them. I then had to make sure I could reverse without any properties coming from the Orford end, and quickly get back into the line of traffic. It felt extremely dangerous to me. Maybe if you are not reversing out, you're coming, face first, it's easier, but it didn't feel very safe to me.
Right, thank you. Can we ask Mike from Transport, does the plan, when it's completed, is it going to include an adequate turning circle to so that people can get out forward onto the road? All the discussions seem to be on the lines of people coming out forward onto the road.
Thanks, Chair. If you look on page 51 of the paper report, that shows the general arrangement of the site. And you can see the position of the dwelling, the position of the parking spaces for the cars. And that area in front allows for the cars to turn around within the plot. But also the way that access is created at 90 degrees to the existing access track creates a secondary turning head. So if anyone should go down there either by accident or something larger for deliveries, there's a secondary turning head that allows vehicles to enter and exit the highway in forward gear.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Nikki, have you got any comments about the design with the no windows, which of course were to prevent overlooking of the houses?
That's exactly it, Chair. So the development has been designed specifically for this site, and I would agree that in certain circumstances, blank gables aren't necessarily a positive feature. In this particular instance, it minimises any impact on the neighbours to the rear. We also consider what actually is visible beyond the fence line, and it is the roof line in effect, which is what the neighbours would see, with it being a bungalow.
Right, thank you. I'll go on to Councillor Wright. Have you got any comments you want to make?
No, I was thinking, was there any access for the current residents to the back of their properties? But I don't think there is there?
Nikki, can you answer that?
I don't, looking at the plans, I don't believe there is, no.
Okay. I will run through the councillors again, see if there's any further comments or questions after the points brought up by Councillor Wheeler. Councillor Barr.
Thank you. One of the things I notice, I'm lockdown, so I'm not travelling to sites, but I have been looking at Google Maps, and it looks like a fairly scrappy site at the moment. Whereas here, in addition to the bungalow, there appears to be a landscaping proposition for the site. And overall, if we get what is on page 53 of our papers, or if that's what's built, that would strike me as being a substantial improvement to the site and the outlook over what's there at present. So the question is there a landscaping scheme?
Nikki?
I'm just going to check that for you, Chair. There should be a landscaping condition on there. Yeah, condition 15.
Right. Let me just take a quick look. And is the map on, or the diagram or map on page 51 representative of that, or is that going to come back?
So this, yes, so it's a full planning permission. So this is what it would look like. Yes.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carey.
Yes, Chair. It's an odd application. This it's as has already been commented. The design is not the best I've seen, and its location adjacent to the neighbouring properties leaves me with a little bit of concern. But I'm just wondering if I had this site, I don't think I would have put this property in this location, and I'm wondering, what about the services that this bungalow will need? Electricity, water, sewage, gas. How are they getting to the site from the remote locations where they could make a connection, other than going through the properties on the Orford Road frontage? Does anybody know?
Have you got any answer to that, Nikki?
So in truth, I'm not sure what is there at the moment. I would imagine there is some service in there at the moment to accommodate the stables that are there for mucking out, etc. Other than that, they would have to, if they need any additional, they could lay them up the driveway.
Yeah, it just strikes me as being a very sort of expensive way of going about things, but that's their choice, so I can't really say much further on that.
Thank you. Councillor Friend, have you any comments or further questions?
None at the moment, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Mundry.
No comments or questions, Chair.
Councillor Parish. Councillor Parish, are you with us? We seem to have lost Councillor Parish for the moment. Have you any further comments, Councillor Wheeler?
No, I'm glad it's not just me that thinks it's a rather odd application. Like Councillor Carey, it just seems a very strange place to build a new bungalow. But that's not a planning reason to refuse it. So no further comments, no.
Councillor Wright.
I'll say Councillor Parish is in the building again.
No further comments.
Okay, Councillor Parish, can we go back to you?
Yeah, sorry, I've been disconnected somehow, so I'm on phone until I can try and get back in. Yeah, I mean, I can take the point about blank wall on the southwest face, which is a bit shame, but I can't see any planning reason to refuse it. Can I just be sure, though, the property, the red line, is entirely within the bund, which is to mitigate against flooding, so it doesn't affect that flooding risk at all, does it?
Do you want to comment on that, Nikki?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, that's correct. So it wouldn't affect the bund at all. That's a separate asset outside of their ownership.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask myself, the access onto the main road, I think it only just or slightly doesn't comply with the usual standards. Could I have some confirmation on that situation from the Transport Officer, Mike?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I mean, ordinarily we would measure the visibility splay from the curb line at the edge of the carriageway back in towards the site at 2.4 metres. But for sort of individual driveways and lightly trafficked situations, we can relax that to 2 metres. And at that relaxation, it does meet visibility standards. But I think the key issue is, if you look on page 48 of your report, there's obviously the picture of the existing access. It's an existing access. It's already used to gain access to the land and the stables. So given the fact that the house itself is then connected to the stables, that limits third-party movement, if you like, going to the stables. It'll only be if someone from the house wants to use the stables, they just walk there. So we're satisfied that the access arrangements are appropriate.
All right, thank you.
Chair, may I ask Mike another question?
Certainly.
Has any thought been given to bin collection? Because presumably refuse lorries will not go down that side lane. Refuse lorries will just stick to Orford Road. And I presume that it will be up to the householders to bring the bins the full length of that drive. And there's probably enough room on the side for bins. Is that a consideration for us?
Thanks, Chair. The consideration for us will be the collection points for the bins, because our operatives will only carry a bin 15 metres. We've recently had that clarified from Waste Services. We've always assumed the carry distance is somewhat further. So you're right, Councillor, the onus is on the occupier to bring the bins to a collection point within 15 metres of the main highway.
Right, thank you. Are there any further questions from anyone or comments from councillors? Do any officers wish to make any further points of clarification?
No, thank you, Chair.
Right. So I propose the motion that the application is approved. Can I ask for a seconder? Councillor Barr, are you prepared to second that?
I'm happy to second the motion.
Right, so the motion is proposed and seconded. Are there any amendments to the motion? Okay, can we go to Democratic Services to take the vote? Jenny?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Barr?
For the motion.
Councillor Carey?
Approve.
Councillor Friend?
Approve.
Councillor Grime?
Approve.
Councillor Mundry?
Approve.
Councillor Parish?
Approve.
And Councillor Wheeler?
Approve.
And Councillor Wright?
For.
Thank you. So the application is approved. Thank you.
Thank you. We go on to item 3. That's application number 2019-35262, 9 Broseley Lane, Culcheth Glaisbury, Warrington, WA34HP. This is a full planning application, proposed demolition of the existing dwelling and outbuildings and construction of a new dwelling and associated works. Will the development manager present a report?
Thank you, Chair. The application proposes the replacement dwelling in the Greenbelt. The existing property and its associated outbuildings are in a poor state of repair and are currently vacant. The site is semi-rural in nature, adjacent to Lee Golf Club. This area of Broseley Lane is characterised by large properties in substantial plots with green frontages. The application proposes the demolition of the existing property and the associated outbuildings and a resited replacement dwelling that will be set further back within the site. It will be taller than the existing, but with a smaller total built area. Culcheth and Glaisbury Parish Council have objected to the proposal on the basis that it would result in urban sprawl and reduce the openness of the Greenbelt. It would be overdevelopment and would result in traffic issues. They further consider that existing hedges should be retained should planning permission be granted and that permitted development rights are removed. 4 letters of objection were received from neighbouring properties for reasons reflective of those put forward by the Parish Council and residential amenity, ecology and flooding as detailed within section 4.3 of the report. As members are aware, all planning applications should be determined in accordance with local development plan policies unless other material considerations indicate otherwise. The local plan policies against which the application should be assessed are contained within section 17 of the report for information. The primary issues associated with the development are the principle of the development, residential amenity, the impact on the character of the area and street scene, ecology and highways. And I'll look at each of these. The application is within the green belt, and the policy associated with this allows for the replacement of a building, provided that the new building is in the same use and is not materially larger than the building it replaces. The table within 9.24 of your report provides the details of existing and proposed footprint, floor space and volume. In terms of the existing property, this includes outbuildings. The proposed dwelling does not include any outbuildings, and permitted development rights would be removed under condition 15. The table clearly demonstrates that the proposed footprint and floor space will be below current levels, although the volume created would be increased marginally by 15%. This is reflective of floor to ceiling height required for modern habitable spaces, which would result in a taller dwelling, albeit this would have a lower ridge height to the neighbours. On this basis, the application is considered to accord with Greenbelt policy. Currently, the property is set forwards of the main building line on Broseley Lane, and the proposal will see it move further within the site, reflective of its neighbours. Although the result would be that the proposal would extend 5 metres to the rear of number 13, this would not dissect the 45-degree line from the nearest habitable room windows, and therefore it is considered that there would not be a significant adverse impact on their amenity. There are no proposed habitable room windows in the side elevation, and therefore privacy would not be impacted. It is considered that proportions, height and materials proposed in this development are reflective of the neighbouring properties, and the setting back of the property within the site would mean there would be no adverse impact of the minor additional height of the development compared to the existing on the street scene. The level of hard standings at the front of the development is considered to be proportional to the parking needs required, allowing the cars to access and leave in forward gear. Highways colleagues have no objection to the proposal, subject to conditions. Consideration has been given to the potential for the existing property to host bat roosts given its age and location. A survey was undertaken and submitted indicating a low likelihood of bats, and no further surveys are required at this stage. Notwithstanding that, condition 4 is proposed to ensure that the development is undertaken in accordance with reasonable avoidance measures. Taking into account all material considerations, including those raised by local residents as detailed within your report, it's considered that the application adheres to policies contained within the local plan and is therefore recommended for approval, subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I can confirm that we've received written representations from Groves Town Planning, and you will have also received an update on that, correcting it, and also from Culcheth and Glacebury Parish Council. I'll now ask members of the committee to confirm that they have read and understood these representations. Councillor Barr.
I confirm I've read and understood the representations.
Thank you. Councillor Carey.
Yes, Chair, I've received them and understand them.
Councillor Friend.
Yes, read and understood, Chair.
Councillor Mundry.
Yes, read and understood, Chair.
Councillor Parish. Councillor Parish, are you with us?
I am read and understood. I think I'm back on visual now.
Good. Well done. Councillor Wheeler.
Yes, Chair, read and understood.
Councillor Wright.
Read and understood.
Good, and so have I. I confirm these representations will be included in the minutes of this meeting. I will now invite comments and questions from members to officers in turn, moving along with the start. Councillor Carey, have you got any comments or questions for officers?
No, Chair, I'm generally happy with the application.
Councillor Friend.
None at this moment, Chair, thank you.
Councillor Mundry.
Not at this moment, Chair.
Councillor Parish.
No, except to wonder why the applicant wanted to cut off a lot of lights to the principal room at the front with the porch, but that's not a planning issue.
Councillor Wheeler.
No, Chair, and I was actually pleasantly surprised that it's not as large a proposed rebuild as is happening in lots of Appleton and Stockton Heath, where we have houses filling the plots out of keeping. No, this looks to be nicely designed and a good size.
Thank you, Councillor Wright.
No comments at the moment.
Okay, Councillor Barr.
No comments.
Okay, there's comments come from the parish council about retaining the hedges, and I know there's a lot of trees on the site as well. Could I ask for an update on those, Nikki?
So the hedging along the front of the boundary, the majority of the trees, sorry, so the majority of the trees would not be affected by this development. The hedging along the front of the boundary, you can see it's on page 75 of my report, which is towards the end of the report, shows that hedging being maintained. There's some slight hedge loss as a result of increased visibility, but that is all that's being shown, and we have got a landscaping scheme condition on there as well.
That's right, thank you very much. Does anyone else want to, any other councillors want to make any questions or comments after what we've said? Councillors? No? Officers, have you got any points of clarification that you wish to make?
Nothing from me, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I propose then that the motion that the application is approved. Councillor Carey, are you prepared to second that?
Yes, Chair, I'm happy to do that.
Right, so the proposal that the application is approved is proposed and seconded. Are there any amendments? Right, can I hand over to Democratic Services to take the vote? Jenny?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Barr?
Approve.
Councillor Carey?
Approve.
Councillor Friend?
Approve.
Councillor Grime?
Approve.
Councillor Mundry?
Approve.
Councillor Parish?
Approve.
Councillor Wheeler?
Approve.
And Councillor Wright?
Approve.
Thank you. That application is approved.
Okay, thank you very much. We now come on to item 1, application 2016 38492. This is land at Peel Hall, land south of the M62, bounded by Elm Road, Birch Avenue, Poplars Avenue, Newhaven Road, Windermere Avenue, Grassmere Avenue, Merewood Close, Osprey Close, Lockerbie Close, Ballater Drive, Mill Lane in Poplars and Hume, Warrington. This is a major development, an outline planning application for a new mixed-use neighbourhood comprising a residential institution, that is a residential care home, class U C2, up to 1,200 dwelling houses and apartments, that's class U C3, a local centre including a food store up to 2,000 square metres, that's A1, financial and professional services, restaurants and cafes, drinking establishments, hot food takeaways, that's class uses A2 to A5 inclusive. Also units within use class D1, non-residential institutions of up to 600 square metres in total, with no single unit of more than 200 square metres. A family restaurant, a pub of up to 800 square metres, that's use classes A3 or A4. A primary school. Open space including sports pitches with ancillary facilities. Means of access. This includes the demolition of 344, 346 and 348 Poplars Avenue, and also, for another access, 458 and 460 Poplars Avenue, and all the supporting infrastructure. All detailed matters other than access reserved for subsequent approval. The application is accompanied by an environment impact assessment. And we have a presentation. If we can hand over to planning for that.
Thank you, Chair. Martha will be leading the presentation tonight. Just to make you aware, as you've just alluded to there, Chair, this application it's not an application that we're determining tonight. We're looking at how we continue to defend the appeal, given DMC's previous resolution, which was based on insufficient information. Quite a while ago now. That situation has moved on. So we're looking to update members on the current situation and how we recommend this should be taken forward during the appeals process. So I'll just hand over to Martha.
Thank you, Martha.
Thank you, Chair. There's a summary of the up-to-date position in relation to the appeal on page 18 of the agenda report. That sets out the complicated process that this application and appeal has taken and where we are at present. Members will be familiar with the site, I'm sure. There's an aerial photograph on screen now for you, and if we move on to the next slide, we've got the parameters plan, which is also in your agenda pack. It's an outline application, and this is the indicative parameters plan that was submitted to the Planning Inspectorate. This is an updated parameters plan that was submitted in March this year. The summary on page 18 explains that the inquiry in relation to this appeal has been reopened. But just to go back to the position of the council in the 2018 inquiry, if you move on to the next slide, please, Nikki. In 2018, the appeal was heard at a public inquiry. At that point, members of the Development Management Committee had refused the application in 2017, and the council's position during the 2018 inquiry is summarised here. Members had refused the application for two reasons, as Nikki's just referred to, and this was defended at the inquiry in 2018. The second reason for refusal of the council related to social infrastructure matters. Now, this was resolved before the inquiry in 2018 through the entering into a legal agreement, a Section 106 agreement. This secured delivery of relevant matters for social infrastructure provision, and therefore the council didn't contest this reason for refusal at the inquiry. It was essentially resolved and fell away at the inquiry. The outstanding issue from the council's perspective in 2018 was reason for refusal 1, which related to insufficient information relating to highways, air quality and noise impacts. If you move on to the next slide, please, Nikki. The up-to-date position on these reasons for refusal is set out in the agenda report before you tonight. The second reason for refusal relating to social infrastructure is being reviewed, and matters will be updated in relation to current requirements, current policy, and the Section 106 agreement is being drafted. We have a draft with us now, and it's expected that that will be entered into before the inquiry opens, before a new inquiry opens. There is ongoing work reviewing the detail of this, but it's not expected that this matter will still be a matter for the new inquiry, and it will be resolved in the same way it was in 2018. Turning to the first reason for refusal, which related to insufficient information for highways, air quality and noise impacts, new information has been submitted by the appellant, and that was received in March this year. Just move on to the next slide, please, Nikki.
Chair, can I interrupt? I don't know if other people have got it. There's a box on the screen about Nikki Gallagher presenting, which is obscuring the information. I don't know if that's just me or others have got it, including the public. But you can't see the whole slide.
I think that's just you, Steve, because I've not got it.
Hi, Councillor Parish.
Try and get rid of it. Okay.
Councillor Parish, it seems to be yours. The screen seems clear.
Thank you.
Thank you. The new information that was submitted in March 2020 is summarised here and summarised in the main agenda report. There was traffic modelling data submitted in the new transport assessment. An environmental statement addendum was submitted. This included air quality assessment and noise reports concerning the appeal scheme. The information has been accepted by the Planning Inspectorate for consideration as part of the new inquiry, and the council have recently publicised this information in accordance with new legislation, which allows this to be publicised in a revised way, which allows digital copies to be available for members of the public. Next slide, please, Nikki. The highway's up-to-date position is set out in the agenda report, and just to summarise, there's considered to be 4 key issues relating to the highways case presented by the appellant. The council considers the main issues to be impact on Sandy Lane West arm of the A49 and A574, Cromwell Avenue Signal Junction, particularly queuing here. Impact on A50 Orford Green and Hilden Road roundabout. Impact on Poplars Avenue and Capesthorne Road and surrounding residential roads due to increased level of traffic. And then fourthly, the impact on Delph Lane due to the level of traffic. If you move on to the next slide, please, Nikki. Now it's a bit difficult to see, but if members do need anything pointed out to them, we've got the slide with the local highway network on, and Mike Taylor can come back to you and respond to any specific queries relating to the 4 key issues that have been identified. Next slide, please, Nikki. So the council's position in relation to the new transport assessment that's been submitted by the appellant is that a new access strategy will be required. So the council's position is no longer that insufficient information has been submitted. It's that we don't accept the access strategy that's proposed. The council considers significant mitigation is needed to overcome the key issues that previously referred to, those 4 key issues. Key issue number 3, the third key issue, is the impact on Poplars Avenue and Capesthorne Road. This is considered by officers to be the most serious impact and the key reason that a new access strategy is required. The other key issues that were referred to on the previous slide may potentially be addressed by appropriate mitigation that could be secured through condition of section 106. That would need further design work and review of possible mitigation measures, and it would also require agreement with the appellant on how and if that mitigation was put forward and how it was secured and delivered. So there is some ongoing work in relation to those key issues. So it's just to bring to your attention that there is potential to consider mitigation around those issues, but certainly for key issue 3, officers considered that that's insurmountable at this stage and will be our key argument in terms of the reopened inquiry. Next slide, please, Nikki. In relation to air quality matters, the agenda report sets out that previously that was an objection due to insufficient information. The appellant didn't demonstrate the air quality impacts clearly enough due to a number of errors with the criteria used to set the air quality model and for the traffic data used. For the new air quality assessment that's been submitted in March this year, the criteria used within the model set up traffic data and detailed modelling carried out at the junctions has been agreed with council officers, between officers and the appellant. The air quality assessment and results and conclusions are now considered to be acceptable, and it's agreed that additional traffic generated by development will not cause a significant impact on air quality. Therefore, subject to a condition to secure a 30-metre buffer zone, which is shown on the parameters plan submitted by the appellant, this would deal with risk of exceedance of nitrogen dioxide. The council do not intend to raise any objections to the development on air quality grounds, but the council's air quality officer has joined the meeting tonight and is available if members have any specific questions on air quality matters and the review of the new information. Next slide, please, Nikki. So we have here a contour diagram which is in the agenda report, showing the nitrogen dioxide impacts with development, and then the next slide for members would also show without the development. The Air Quality Environmental Protection Officer, Richard, can give you more information if you need to. We're just showing you here a comparison of with and without the development. Next slide, please, Nikki. Similarly, noise matters was an issue in relation to insufficient information for the 2018 appeal and the inquiry. Traffic data has now been agreed, which has been used in the noise assessments, and it's now considered that there will be no significant noise impacts arising for the development proposal. Implementation and mitigation for all properties will be required by condition, and also acoustic assessment will be required with each reserved matters application to deal with the detail. Further consideration will also be needed of appropriate buffer zones around the existing kennels within the site to ensure impact to future amenity and nuisance does not exist. It's expected that this can be secured by condition. Next slide, please. So to summarise, the council's case in 2020, the central part of the first reason for refusal related to the absence of adequate information to accurately forecast potential impact. That related to highways and transport mitigation, and also in terms of air quality and noise effects, traffic noise effects. The air quality and noise concerns have now been addressed in terms of the outline proposals, although further detail will be required at reserve matter stage and through the design and layout of the future detailed proposals. The council's highway objection remains. Next slide, please, Nikki. So for the reopened public inquiry, which we are still waiting for confirmation of the data of the new inquiry, the conclusions of the appellant's transport assessment are not accepted by the council, and it's considered the appellant has not demonstrated acceptable mitigation to deal with the highways and transportation impacts of the appeal proposals. It's considered that an alternative access strategy is required for the proposed development to be successfully delivered at the site. It's considered the appellant has not demonstrated that the impacts from the development on the highway network would not be significantly adverse, having regard to local plan policies and guidance contained within the NPPF. It's therefore the recommendation that the council continue to defend the appeal on this basis only. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. From the point of view particularly of members of the public listening into the meeting, can I just emphasise Martha's first point, that we're not approving or rejecting Satman's application this evening. This is the application that we have rejected already in 2017. There has been an appeal which was not upheld, but that Satnam then took this to the High Court, and as a result we have got a reopened inquiry which will take place later this year probably. The decision we have to make tonight is not about approving or rejecting, it's about whether we continue to defend our decision, whether we continue to defend the appeal. If we do decide to continue to defend the appeal, we then have to decide on what grounds we're going to defend it. And we have the officer's advice that we defend it on what they think is the one really very strong reason that this will be the most effective thing to do. So these are the two things we need to discuss. In addition to the officer's recommendations, we've got representations from residents. I confirm that we've received written representations from Mr. D. Sawyer, Mr. J. Parr, Mrs. Johnson Taylor, Mr. J. Sullivan, Mr. G. Settle, Ms. Sam Steen, Councillors John Kerr Brown and Hilary Cooksey, Mr. I. Webb, Mr. G. O'Brien, Ms. T. Tutton and others on behalf of residents of Birch Avenue and Elm Road, Ms. G. Walker and others on behalf of residents of Farrington Road. This is an exceptional number of representations that I've decided we should accept, and they are all against the application. However, this is a very major application, and it is the reason why there's only 3 items on the agenda. The perimeter of this site is huge compared to ordinary applications, and the representations come from people at different places round it who are seeing the situation in relation to their own area, so they are distinctly different. In all these 11 representations, there's only a very minor amount of repetition, and I'm very grateful to the public who have cooperated and made real efforts to write about different points. I regret we're unable to present representations in support, but we have not received any. Of course, Satnam and its representatives have been in extensive communication with our officers, as is clear throughout the report, so I take this as balancing information to what we have got from the objectors. I think I need to clarify that we did receive one representation that stated it was in support, but actually it was a 12th objection written with quite strong irony. I rejected it because it did not raise any new material planning issues, and it did include comments throughout that some people I think might find offensive. So I will ask members of the committee to confirm that they have read and understood the 11 representations. Councillor Barr.
I've read and understood all the representations.
Thank you. Councillor Carey.
Yes, Chair, I confirm.
Councillor Friend.
Yes, Chair, confirm. Thank you.
Councillor Mundry.
Read and understood, Chair.
Councillor Parish.
Yes, read and understood.
Councillor Wheeler. Councillor Wheeler, are you with us? We seem to have lost Councillor Wheeler, so I'll come back to her. Sorry.
Can you hear me, Chair?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
Sorry. Yes, read and understood, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wright.
Read and understood, Chair.
And also I have read and understood. And I confirm these 11 representations will be included in the minutes of this meeting. I will now invite comments and questions from members to the officers in turn, starting this time with Councillor Friend. Councillor Friend,
Chair, thank you. I was wondering why the officers were inviting new access strategies from the appellant, and surely we should just be opposing the whole application. Thank you.
I don't know if that should go to Paul Clisby or
I can respond briefly, Chair, but it might be Mike Taylor that can expand.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Have you got comments to make to us there?
Thanks, Chair. Only in respect of obviously the last application came in, was dealt with a public inquiry, and we're obliged to consider the impacts of that. We didn't have the information available at that time to determine the actual impacts of it. What is now clear, we're clear that the impacts in the residential area to the south, which is obviously Poplars Avenue, particularly Capestone Road, the proposed access points that loads development traffic directly onto Poplars Avenue cause that concern. So if development is to come forward at that site, it's felt that a new access strategy is needed. In terms of the planning side of it, I think it's probably one of the planning officers can give you a clearer steer on the status of that site and whether it's considered as developable land or not. But certainly we're of the opinion that the existing proposed access strategy is not acceptable.
Chair, can I just come back?
Certainly.
I think there might be some confusion here in terms of the appeal and the process we're in now in terms of the lead up to the new inquiry, whenever that is scheduled for. I don't think it's a case that officers are inviting now as part of this appeal scheme a new access strategy to be put forward. We're just pointing out that the council's case is that this access strategy that's before us now and will be part of the inquiry and in front of the inspector, the council's case is that isn't a suitable access strategy, it doesn't work. So to summarise the council's position, it's considered a new strategy would be needed for this site to come forward.
Thank you. Is that clear, Councillor Friend?
Sure, I could probably just add something into that as well, if you don't mind.
Please do, yes.
Just to make it clear that during so it's in the run up to an inquiry, there are various meetings that occur with the all parties. So in this case, the Real Six, the appellant, and ourselves. And within that, it's the it's the inspector who has confirmed that we are to accept additional information. So in this particular instance, she has confirmed that we will accept. She will accept the inquiry, the additional information that's the revised ES, the revised transport assessment, etc., and that we need to continue a dialogue with the appellant towards the inquiry process. So it isn't something that we have any control over. We need to maintain a dialogue.
Thank you. I think that's very clear. Is that okay, Councillor Friend?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
It's Councillor Parrish. Can I just chip in at the start of this? Because in terms of the whole situation, would it be helpful if officers told us what the courts have already decided about this site? Because I've got the impression that the courts have basically told us, yes, that it is possible to build on that site, and it is just the detail of things like the access and the traffic that they were in, and effectively the courts have decided it's a suitable site. Is that right?
Sorry, Chair.
I can confirm that they decided that the site is developable but not currently deliverable, for reasons that we gave in 2017, which Satnam have gradually tried to answer, but our officers' advice is that it is still not deliverable because of the highways issues. Do you want to expand on that, Nikki?
Other than to say the original appeal, so the decision that was issued by the Secretary of State dismissed the appeal. That decision was subsequently challenged through the courts, and that decision was quashed, which means that we're in a position that the application is reopened. So in doing that, we haven't got a decision, and we can't say which way that this is going to go at the moment. And obviously time has moved on with the additional information that's being submitted. But you're absolutely right, Councillor Grime, that remains our position at the moment. Is that what we see in front of us? It isn't sufficient to allow development on this site, in our opinion.
Thank you. Going back to Councillor Mundry, have you any comments or questions for officers?
Yes, I'm just wondering whether it has got insufficient infrastructure for for the problems that are going to be overcrowded on the local roads. Would it be highways? I don't know.
Chair,
I think that, just to respond to that, that is the council's case in terms of the summary. I don't know if Nikki, you can go back to the slide before the local highway network plan. The summary of the council's position that officers are recommending is that there will be impacts on the local highway network, summarised into these 4 issues. Number 3 being the key issue, but the other roads and the impacts there also at the moment being issues that officers Mike Taylor can expand on, to consider there to be an unacceptable impact.
Okay, thank you. There'll be opportunities for people to come back, obviously, to that. But in the meantime, Councillor Wheeler, have you got any comments or questions?
No, Chair, not at this stage.
Councillor Wright?
Not at this stage.
Councillor Barr?
Just one comment, which is a historical comment about the site. This site has been subject to appeals through the courts for over 20 years. It was originally designated by Warrington as Greenbelt. There was a challenge in the High Court that forced it to be removed from Greenbelt in the local plan at that time, and the council fought in order to try to keep it in Greenbelt, and we lost in the courts. Throughout that period, it's been felt that the access to the site is inadequate for the proposal development, or for development on this scale, and that has been stated regularly over the last 15 years. It seems amazing that in 2020 we are still in front of the High Court with a proposal to develop the whole of this site with an inadequate highway scheme. It's not as though that should have come as news to the landowners or the developers, because they've been told that for the last 15 or 20 years. So this is just a general informative comment for those members of the public who are there, but that's the strange position that we find ourselves in, that we are being asked yet again, can we develop this site without adequate road access? And it's our job tonight to say yes or no.
Thank you. Councillor Carey.
Yes, Chair. I support the officer proposal on the highways situation. This site really is a key part of what is the largest residential development in the northwest of the borough. It's hard to imagine how access to this plot at the northern end can be accommodated without some major changes to the present highway strategy. If you look at the outer boundaries of this area, you've got the A49, which is really at saturation point, partly because of the retail development that's gone on at Junction 9 and Gemini. So the points at which this area comes out onto the A49 are already heavily congested, and especially at peak times. And if you go sort of east-west, you start at the A49 going down along Long Lane through Padgate Lane along to Manchester Road. That also is a very congested area at peak times. So without a proper highway strategy, the traffic that comes out of this site is probably going to go towards Manchester Road via Padgate Lane, or try to filter through the Orford estate to get out onto the A49. And there's very limited opportunity for that to happen without exacerbating the present situation, which is already, as I say, very congested at times. So to me, a comprehensive highway strategy that looks a bit further afield than the 4 points mentioned on page 20 and on the previous slide, to me is essential before anybody could even contemplate generating more vehicles onto this road network. It's an area I use every day of the week virtually, and it does at times cause major problems. You have to go back on yourself within the housing estates to be able to find a route out of the built up area, and it's just untenable really to put another 1,200 properties into the mix with the attendant number of vehicles that will generate. So I support the strategy being recommended, and I think a more comprehensive highways strategy than the one we've got at the present time is needed, that looks at the wider area. That's the way I see it.
Thank you. Can we go round again and see if people have further points? And then we have the officers from Environmental Health here, so it would be useful to ask them to comment on what Martha was telling us about those issues having been probably resolved in advance of the reopened application. But let's see if we've got any further comments on what we've discussed so far. Councillor Friend.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would echo everything that Councillor Barr and Councillor Carey have just said. It's also very disappointing the amount of time and cost that it has cost this council over those 20 years in officer time, legal fees, etc. It has been a considerable drain on the council. I think something really needs to be done about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mundry.
No more comments, Chair.
Excuse me. Councillor Parish.
Chair, yes, I mean, we always, as members, we're always aware we're working under tight parameters set by the government in the National Planning Policy Framework. And gosh, that starts from the presumption that the answer to any application is yes, so you have to go good reason for refusing. But I'm just wondering what the impact is of what the government has just been announcing this week. I mean, the Prime Minister's set out his stall with his dismissive comment about nuke counting as part of the red tape stopping development. And I just wondered when any new legislation is likely to come in, because would we actually be wasting our money on this appeal if the government's going to rip up the planning system anyway and hand the process over to development corporations and, dare to say it, donors who manage to sit next to them at corporate meals?
Very valid points, I'm sure, but I don't know if there's any possible answers to them. Have any officers got any comment to make in response to Councillor Parish?
Yes, thanks, Chair. I think at the current time, all we can do is work within the parameters and the planning regime that we have. And should that be changed during the course of this inquiry, then we will need to be responsive to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Wheeler. Councillor Wheeler, do you have any further comments or questions?
No, Chair, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. No, just to echo Councillor Carey's comments. I mean, the site itself around the Orford estate is a tricky site to navigate. I get lost frequently. I've still not found my way out of Poplars Avenue. So you are adding problems to problems without an adequate highway access proposed by the applicant.
Okay, Councillor Wright.
Yeah, I support everything that's been said and support the recommendation.
Okay, Councillor Barr.
No more comment.
Councillor Carey.
No comment, Chair.
Okay. I would like to add then that looking at the mitigation measures that Satnam have suggested for the problems on the roads that have been identified, I didn't think that they were impressive, really. There were things like changing the facing of traffic lights, using the grass verges for parking. They couldn't really be called a proper road strategy at all. And I think that the suggestion that we've got for the grounds for defending it is really strong. And I hope that will turn out to be so. There were other grounds for opposing the application that came out of the representations. They have been answered by the officers who feel that the inspector will find that probably these other matters have been resolved, but the officers from the environmental health have kindly come along, and perhaps they could give us a summary of their views on this that might help the objectors who put a lot of work into their representations to gather where we're coming from. If the officers from environmental health could give us a brief summary.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm Steve Smith. I'm the Principal Environmental Health Officer within the Council. My primary focus has been looking at noise through this site. Obviously, there are a number of different noise constraints and issues that would arise from this development. We have to consider the impact of noise on any future incoming occupiers. However, that can be done quite easily by condition. Primarily the motorway is the main noise source, generating noise around the site. We have to consider the impact of this development for the traffic flows and the changes in traffic flow levels. And previously, with the submitted information, the traffic assessments were not agreed to such an extent that we were able to determine the level of change in noise that would occur for the existing residents surrounding the site and around the site accesses. Unfortunately, in terms of noise, you need a very significant increase in traffic flows to make a very minor change in overall noise levels. And on reviewing the data after it has been reviewed by the consultants based on the traffic, the acoustic consultants have reviewed it based on the traffic data, excuse me, and there have been only 1 or 2 areas where a barely detectable change in noise level would occur. However, they have recommended mitigation for that to protect the existing residential properties that will be affected by that. The final main area is obviously concerning the kennels, which runs in the centre of the site. This obviously is impacted by road traffic noise on the motorway, but what we are concerned about is the proximity of new residential development to the existing kennels and how to protect the interests of the kennels and how to protect the residential amenity. At this stage, with it being an outline permission with subsequent reserve matters, we will have to address those at reserve matters stage and make provision for those interests to be considered. In terms of the appeal generally, whilst we recommended or there was insufficient information previously, all of the elements that we had concerns about have now been addressed on a noise basis. And because of that, this is why we are no longer able to sustain the reason for our refusal, which was inadequate information provided with the application. The updated information is of much better quality and we feel addresses those areas of concern that we had, and as indicated, we no longer can support acoustically grounds to appear, to contest this, and subject to implementation of design measures through subsequent stages. If permission is ultimately granted, we have to go with that recommendation. We can't actually fight that.
Right, thank you. Are there any other further comments from officers on this?
Yes, John. I'm Richard Moore. I'm the Air Quality Officer. So do you want to give a quick brief on the air quality?
Yes, certainly, because that's a matter a lot of people raise.
Yeah, so based on our original reason for refusal was based on the lack of information for the air quality. So it was never based on the actual impacts because we just didn't have that information. So the original assessment that was carried out by SatNam was just not fit for purpose for us to actually be able to tell what the air quality impacts would be from the traffic, but also what existing air quality from like the motorway would be on the site. They've submitted the new information that we've reviewed. It's been done by a completely different consultant, and the consultant they've used is more of an air quality specialist who's got quite a lot of experience in large developments. So they understand the modelling for this site because the size is quite complex. So we did quite a bit of work with them and liaising with them to agree how the model should be set up, which is all being carried out as we would want and meets all the guidance now. To support the modelling, because modelling does always have uncertainties with it, it's never accurate, is that they've carried out their own monitoring in the area, and that's also been supported by a number of monitoring that we also do down Winnick Road, but also we've been doing monitoring up near Peel Hall, Kennels, just to assess the pollution off the motorway. So that's all been built into their model to make it more accurate and give a more accurate sort of reflection of the current air quality in the area. So we're quite happy with the assessment now as a technical piece, and then when we're looking at the results of it, as we would probably expect, because of the traffic levels, you need quite significant increases in traffic to affect air quality, and the levels of increases on the different roads would only have like a negligible impact on the air pollution in the area, and most of the air quality meets the national objectives and the limits that are set and based on health grounds. And the only areas we do still have issues with are right against the motorway, which is why we've recommended the 30-metre buffer zone to protect against that. So as it stands, we just don't have the evidence anymore that air quality would be an issue from the site that would sort of give us grounds for continuing refusal of the application.
Right, thank you very much.
Okay.
Do members wish to make any further comments or questions, either in reply to those comments or about any other part of the application? Going back to Councillor Friend.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm rather concerned about the 4-storey apartments that seem very, very close to the motorway. What impact would noise and air quality have for the people who live in the new apartments?
Chair, I can come back on that point. Just at this stage, what would we look at? What is subject to the appeal is an outline application with all detailed matters other than access reserved. So the location of those particular, whether it's indicative 4-storey, etc., that's all for consideration at the next stage.
Okay. Is there any further you wish to take this, Councillor Friend? Have you any other comments?
Yeah, I just would have assumed any noise barrier or anything would have to be extremely high to protect a 4-storey building.
So the parameters plan there we've got up in front of us, it talks about up to. So it may be 4-storey, it may not. So at this stage, we don't know. That will come through the reserved matters application. But perhaps Steve could provide some more information on how we could defend, how a building could be defendable in those terms, in noise terms.
Sorry, which
Certainly.
Steve? Oh, go on.
Yes, Smith, sorry.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, there's a lot of design mitigation that can be built in. The arrangement of buildings around a noise source, obviously acoustic barriers, acoustic bunds, combinations of that. You can include significantly uprated glazing to any facade that does face the motorway. Obviously, that is only effective provided the facade is solid. So if you had an openable window along that facade, then that would obviously introduce noise. So where there are noisy facades, we would obviously look to have a ventilation system. We would encourage the arrangement of buildings so that primary rooms do not necessarily face that facade where possible. And obviously any external amenity spaces are obviously at lower level. They would naturally gain more attenuation by the acoustic fence, but the imposition of higher storey buildings along the motorway facade would actually would become a significant acoustic barrier further to the south across the site. So there may be some slight sacrificial element by upgrading mitigation along the noisiest facades. However, anything beyond that facade then gains additional protection by the bulk of building design, whether that be 2-storey, 3-storey or 4-storey or whatever comes forwards.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Friend, so far?
Yes, I suppose so. Still not pleasant to live in those buildings, I would think. Thank you.
Councillor Mundry, have you any further comments or questions for officers?
No comments or questions, Chair.
Councillor Parish? Councillor Parish, are you with us?
I think it is worth emphasising, of course, that the council is at risk of costs at an appeal if we act unreasonably, and I think I'm guessing that's part of the reasoning behind the officers saying that these are the reasons we can't defend them without risking huge costs. But I think, was it the argument as well that if we concentrate on the one objection where we really are strong, and that's the traffic issues and where it all goes, we'd probably do better just to emphasise that one point.
Yes, I think obviously it's a matter of opinion, but it certainly is our officers' opinion. That's what they stress to us. Do you want to come back on that, Martha or Nikki?
I think to go back on the first point is risk costless appeal if it were unreasonable. That is the case. That isn't why we're putting this recommendation towards you now. It's but not associated with costs. It's purely on the basis of this is the technical information that has been assessed, and this is the officer's view on the technical information that's been received. As to why we've brought it back to planning committee now, well, the previous resolution from DMC is the one that the inspector will be looking at the moment. That reflects the DMC's resolution pre-inquiry. During the course of the last couple of years, the situation has changed significantly on the site, and therefore it's right to bring this back to members to keep you fully informed and to give you the opportunity to influence how we take this forward, given your previous recommendation.
Thank you, Nikki. Councillor Wheeler, have you got any further comments you want to make or questions? Councillor Wheeler.
Sorry, Chair. Strange message just flashed on my screen. No, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wright.
No, I think it's right. We should put the best defence forward, so I support what the officers are saying.
Okay, Councillor Barr.
No further comment.
Councillor Carey. Councillor Carey.
Councillor Wheeler suddenly came up on my screen. Yes, I'm happy to support the recommendations in the report.
Right, are there any other comments or questions at all from councillors? Do officers want to make any further points of clarification?
No, thank you, Chair.
Right, then I propose the motion that we continue to defend the appeal on highway grounds. Councillor Friend, are you prepared to second that motion?
Yes, I'll second that. Yeah.
Okay, so that motion is proposed and seconded. Are there any amendments? Right, can I hand over then to the Democratic Service Officer to take the vote and state the result?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Barr?
In favour.
Thank you. Councillor Carey?
In favour.
Thank you. Councillor Friend?
In favour.
Councillor Grime?
For.
Councillor Mundry?
In favour.
Councillor Parish?
In favour.
Councillor Wheeler?
In favour.
And Councillor Wright?
For.
Thank you. So that's unanimous that councillors agree to continue to defend the appeal on highway grounds.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 5, the appeal decision summary. The report is attached to your agenda starting on page 15. Does the development manager wish to make any additional comment?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Are there any questions from members? Remembering that these are just, there are no results this time. These are just updates on what appeals are in. Any questions from Councillor Barr?
No further questions.
Councillor Carey?
No comment.
Councillor Friend?
Just that's page 139 on the digital pack.
Right, thank you very much.
No questions.
Councillor Mundry?
No comment.
Councillor Parish?
No further comment.
Councillor Wheeler?
No further comment.
Councillor Wright?
No comment.
Are there any further points of clarification from officers?
No, thank you, Chair.
Right, I propose that the appeal summary report is accepted. Can I have a seconder? Would you like to second that, Councillor Mundry?
I second that, Chair.
Thank you. Will the Democratic Services Officer take the vote and announce the result, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Barr,
In favour.
Councillor Carey,
In favour.
Councillor Friend,
In favour.
Councillor Grime,
In favour.
Councillor Mundry,
In favour.
Councillor Parish,
In favour.
Councillor Wheeler, Councillor Wheeler,
In favour, Chair. Jenny, sorry.
thank you. Councillor Wright,
For.
thank you. That report will be noted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for your attendance and really hard work and very opposite comments. The meeting is closed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Aye.